Hey now, this is one of those bits of the show where I quote loads of old cliches at you. Things like, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And if it ain't happening, make it happen. But you know, it is very true in fishing that when things aren't happening, you need to take action. It's true of all types of fishing, but especially with pike fishing. Because when the pike aren't feeding, then you need to do something extra special sometimes, just to put yourself in with a chance of that one take that could save the day. And here's a little trick for you that I've used on many occasions on this gravel pit in Oxfordshire to catch some good pike. I've been fishing here for about, I don't know, 3-4 hours I suppose, with a dead bait ledgered hard on the bottom, which is pretty well standard tactics for pike when you think about it, and I haven't had a sniff. This is what I'm going to do. Have you ever heard of popped up baits? Well, you've probably heard of popped up baits for carp fishing, but what about for pike? Take a look at this. I've got a nice fresh herring here. The sort of bait that no pike could resist. But a bait like this has been sitting on the bottom for all that time and they have resisted it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach it onto my trebles in the normal fashion. I've got 2 barbless points on each hook and 1 barbed, which is the bait holding point. That's the standard way to present dead baits, with the top treble in the tail and the bottom treble down the flank. Now, tied on to the bottom treble is this. This is a dead bait floater stick and it's made out of balsa dowel. And let me tell you, I'm going to push this into this herring, and although they don't like it up on Mr. Manring, the pike certainly do. So, what you have to do is open up the bait's mouth and slide the floater stick into the mouth, pushing gently, taking care not to split the bait. There you go, that's perfect. Now you might be wondering why I've got this piece of line attached to the floater stick. Well, this is the clever bit, you see, because if I cast this bait off or it gets chomped by a pike, then I get my bait back because it's attached to this piece of line here. Before I cast out, let me show you how the rig works, but before I even do that, let me tell you, this is a great swim for close range fishing, because what we've got here is a steep drop off right in the margin, and the pike like to patrol along the bottom of this shelf. Anyway, this is how the rig works. Basically, what we've got here is a long bomb link, which is sitting on a sliding ring. And this rig was shown to me, incidentally, by my mate, Mick Brown, old steptoe himself. It's one of his favourites because it doesn't tangle up. What happens when you cast is the trace and the bomb fly apart, provided, and this is very important, that this link here of weak line is longer than the length of the trace. So you can see how it hangs there. The bait is lying short of the length of the bomb trace. Now, as I said, that's sliding on the line. We've got a bead and then we've got our trace. What happens when you cast this into the swim is quite interesting. Let me just show you something first. Let's test the bait in the margins. And there you can see the bait sits tail up. It floats. So when you cast this out, you tighten down to the bomb and the bait sits up like that, popped up off the bottom. And the amount that it's popped up by is dictated by the length of this tail. So you can pop it up by 10 feet if you want to, but normally 2 or 3 feet's a good idea, particularly, and get this, if you're fishing over weed, because the last thing you want to do, if there's a weedy area out there, is cast your bait out and let it sink into the weed so the pike can never find it. But we all know that pike love to lie in weed. So by putting a bait out there on top of the weed, so it's just sitting above it, it's a really deadly presentation. But it works in clear water too, and it works particularly well on this gravel pit. And all I need to do here, rather than make a long cast, is just literally underarm this bait over the edge of the shelf, tighten up to it and let it fish. As I say, when you clip this up, clip up really tight. Just tighten up to the bait on your bait runner till everything comes tight, and then you know that your bait is fishing at the correct depth off the bottom. Nice and tight. And believe me, when you get a take on this rig, you never get a drop back. It's always an absolute flyer. And talking of absolute flyers, that one's motoring. Well, that was an absolutely storming run on a popped up bait, a popped up herring in fact. Just off the marginal shelf on this gravel pit, you can see the water sloping away. Look at that fish go, woohoo, baby, baby, baby. Fantastic, really fighting like a demon this one. Oh, look at this fish go. Oh dear. I talk about popping baits up. I think this pike's popped up. It's all look at this fish go, fantastic. All over the surface. Wonderful display. Acrobatic stuff, look at that. Tremendous. He's not, or she rather, it's probably a female fish, has not given up yet. Well, it just goes to show the value of buoyant baits, because I've had a dead bait out on the bottom here for quite some time. And nothing happened, and I put out a popped up bait, and 20 minutes later and away it goes. And that fish was probably in this area all day long. Quite remarkable. Oh, here she comes. Lovely pike, look at that. Super. Let's just chin that one out. Wonderful fish. There you go. Popped up special. Nice pike, really fit, good fight. Absolutely brilliant. Total popped up fishing. Well, there's no sign of my herring now. In fact, that bait was taken so confidently, you wouldn't believe it. One of the hooks is in a nice place, right here in the scissors. But the second hook, now I don't know whether you can come in and see this, the second hook is right down in the pike's stomach. Now I don't know whether you can see this here. This is the tail end of the herring, right in the pike's stomach, and the second hook is on the top of the stomach. But if you've got the right equipment and you use barbless trebles, it's simply a matter of just popping the forceps in, reversing the hook and lifting it out, and that shows the beauty of using barbless hooks for pike. If you use a barb hook, it's a lot harder to get the hooks out. Steady on. Nice fish. Not a monster, but my God, what an absolutely superb fight that was. And you know, the thing is, pike fishing is one of those sports where everybody thinks you can just turf the baits out, let them fish for themselves. And of course there are days when it'll happen when you do that, but the really clever pike anglers are the people who make things happen. They move the baits around, they pop baits up, they present them at different distances off the bottom, on the bottom, different types of dead baits. They try a bit of lure fishing. They're the ones that catch the most pike. And that's a classic example of a fish that fell to a different presentation. Super. Well, I'm going to put this fish back, give her freedom. Beautiful clear water in this gravel pit. This is actually St John's Lake at Linear Fisheries, Oxford, and some really nice pike fishing on a day ticket here. Just look at the clarity of the water.